Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria has successfully secured an agreement with Dangote Refinery to facilitate the direct lifting of petroleum products. Thank you so much for joining me today, Femi Oladehin.
Hi, thank you for having me, as usual.
Right. Let's begin from that particular report. I mean, is it film trick or are we getting to the promised land?
I mean, I could totally see the frustration from that man. He said it's like film trick. Look, I mean, the government set itself up for this. Perpetual, you know, we've talked about this several times on this show, that transparency is one of the things that Nigeria has generally suffered from. And that lack of transparency means that the people do not trust the government. And when people do not trust the government, the social contract between Nigerians and the government becomes invalid. And what it becomes apparent is that as we go into this next phase of the Nigerian story, the need for government to be transparent and upfront becomes even more important. But going back to the issue, the reality is that, yes, we know that the Dangote Refinery was going to be a game changer. We also know that there are all sorts of interests and alignments that need to happen to make this sort of seismic change possible. And what we are seeing is just a play out of those realignments of interests. Yes, it might be frustrating because it's playing out right in the public domain, but the truth is that when you look at the way businesses evolved, generally, there are always going to be discussion. So when Dangote, who has built a refinery, expects that his refinery will be one of the primary suppliers of petroleum products to Nigerians, I think that's a natural expectation. But he also must understand, like I said at the last show, that it is important for him to focus on his price elements. As long as his pricing is not competitive, it is unfair on Nigerians and unfair on other business people to continue to force and insist that he is the only sole supplier of petroleum products to the Nigerian market. And as prices try to start to moderate, especially as we go into the winter months, there's going to be significant pressure on him to ensure that the efficiency that's supposed to come from his brand new refinery starts to filter through and start to show in the numbers that people get in terms of the sale price of his petrol products.
Well, let me get your thought on this. Aren't you excited about NNPC saying, look, we're not importing anymore?
Oh, look, it's fantastic news. I've said that we have to get to the point where our primary products are refined in Nigeria, and it's not just petrol or it's not just crude oil. So it is something to celebrate that we're no longer importing petroleum products. What it means is that there's less pressure indirectly on the exchange rate, and then there's less pressure, you know, as well on the supply of USD to the market that needs it. But again, it goes back to one very important thing. Donald Trump has just won elections in the US, and he's going to be doing some very unconventional things to ensure that the US remains competitive, even though it isn't. And Nigeria needs to not fall into the trap where we subsidize uncompetitive businesses just because we want to feel good or for the feel-good effect of saying these are made in Nigerian products. And what we should be focusing on is improved productivity. So if Dangote wants to continue to supply, and if NNPC wants to continue to say that we do not import products anymore, then we need to focus on efficiency. So the 4 refineries that the NNPC has spent billions of dollars saying to us that they are refurbishing, those refineries need to come on stream now. So imagine if Nigeria was able to refine a million barrels of petroleum products, of crude oil on a daily basis. The impact on that is, unlike in the past, where we used to sell our crude and import more expensive petroleum product, we're now able to supply more expensive petroleum products to the global market, and that can only be positive. Last week when I was in Cape Town, there were rumors that certain countries were starting to look at lifting products from Dangote's refinery, and South Africa was one of those countries. That is the sort of news that we want to be hearing from NNPC, not the celebration of the fact that they are no longer importing petrol. Yes, you never should have imported petrol before in the first place if you hadn't let the refineries run down. Now that we have one big refinery working, get the remaining refineries working, and then we can start to, position ourselves as a country.
All
as
right,
a net
let me come in here. I mean,
products.
while I understand that it's positive for us to say we're no longer importing, it's also important that the pricing is better. And not only that, competition is also important. We need other refineries to start working so, you know, we can have that competition and Nigerians will be happier for it. It's not just about we're no longer importing. We need other things to be handled or taken care of. Away from that, I'd like us to take this back to, you know, some weeks earlier when IPMAN complained that it was unable to have a sit down with the refinery. And we're also told about, you know, Dangote PMS being more expensive than imported PMS. And there were also insinuations that importing will crash the price of PMS in the country. So when you look at all of this news, you're asking yourself, what should we be rejoicing about, or where exactly are we? Now, looking at all of that, today we're hearing that there is now an agreement between the two parties, even though we don't have all the details. Now, let me get your thoughts on this and maybe share some insight on what this particular deal is about.
Okay, thanks, Patricia. So the deal is basically putting into place a structure that allows independent marketers lift products from Dangote's refinery. And, you know, that's a positive. You know, one of the things we talked about a few days ago when they actually had gone to court and there were countersuits is that, look, in an open market, you can't force anyone to buy products from you. And if Nigeria is indeed speaking about true deregulation, then a deregulated market means it's a free market. That means I can buy products from whosoever and wheresoever those products are available, as long as I can do it in a competitive way. Now, that still has to be the future for this sector. Because remember this, today we're talking about Dangote's refinery, so that's good. In another few months, hopefully, if the NNPC isn't playing magic with us, using the other man's words, we should have the NNPC refineries working. So which means that, you know, additional production comes into the market. Now we also have some smaller refineries and some larger ones that are also being planned. There's a Bua refinery that's also in the play. Now, what this means is, again, Nigeria could potentially have significantly more petroleum products than it can produce, than it can consume. That is obviously positive. So it means that IPMAN can then go to any of the refineries that are producing crude and that are refining Nigerian crude and buy products from them. They don't have to be restricted to the Dangote refinery. I would say that the reason why there's so much noise around this Dangote refinery today is because it's the only available source of petroleum products for Nigerians locally. Now, the moment other refineries start production, and the Port Harcourt refinery, Warri refinery, Kaduna refinery, if it ever works, the moment those refineries come into production, then it's a completely different conversation. Prices are going to then be determined by both demand and supply and the efficiency of each of the refineries on how they can crack the spread between crude and products, and how that can reflect on their ability to price appropriately. So look, the truth is that this is positive. It at least guarantees that supply is no longer going to be an issue. And the days of queues may eventually permanently disappear from Nigeria. But I think the bigger issue still means that we need to focus on getting more refineries on stream, so that the more refineries we have, the easier it is for us to be able to have a proper open market that is determined by demand and supply, and not a fixed price fixing mechanism that is currently being adopted by the Dangote refinery.
All right, so how significant is the elimination of middlemen in all of this? Because IPMAN, they are saying that once they have this agreement, once they have this deal, the middlemen will be eliminated. So how significant is that to pricing?
Oh, no, middlemen are always a problem anywhere. The reality is that middlemen are a layer of costs that to a large extent, do not actually deliver significant value. And especially in a situation whereby the Dangote refinery is right here in Lagos, there is compelling evidence that people are able to buy from him and at a much cheaper price than they will buy from middlemen. It is only fair that the middleman is eliminated. The NNPC tried unsuccessfully to play that middleman role. But IPMAN, I think in today's market, are quite powerful enough as a bloc to be able to push the sort of reforms that we've been demanding, and that is only positive for the market. Look, at the end of the day, the middleman is there to make money, so which means that even if it's just 1 cent in a liter that the middleman is adding to the underlying costs, it's a pass on to the last mile consumer, and we know it wasn't just 1 cent that those middlemen were pricing on it. So that's positive for the market. I think, again, we just have to go back to transparency. Dangote Refinery and everyone should be able to publish on a daily basis what their last mile price is. And the moment you do that, it just removes the inefficiencies, removes the corruption that has bedeviled the market, and everyone can start to look at a very transparent market, which eventually would mean that Nigerians will stop agitating once they see some level of transparency.
Well, I'm just a bit curious about having, such agreement in a deregulated environment, because they're talking about pricing. They're telling us that between, I think, today or tomorrow, maybe, they will have the price and then they'll make it public. Can that really be binding? I mean, I feel something may have to give for this to actually work. Don't you think so? I mean, in a deregulated environment, you can't be talking about having an agreement with just one refinery. What do you think?
There's a reason why I really always this show with you. You always ask the right questions. Look, these guys know for certain that what they are offering Nigerians is not exactly yet transparent. And that's why I've focused on transparency on this show. There needs to be increased transparency. Everyone needs to be clear about what we are paying for and how we're paying for it. And when that clarity becomes apparent, then it will be obvious that actually it's funny that they're telling us that there's a fixed price for the product, a price that is determined by inputs that move on a daily, almost per minute basis, cannot be fixed if you are being transparent. So what we should expect, and that's why I said that what Dangote should be doing, if there was transparency, is that he will be repricing his products on a daily basis. So every day at 9 a.m. in the morning, there would be a new price that is announced for his products. And anyone who wants to come and lift cargo on that day pays that product, or people who have signed fixed term contracts can lift at whatever price. But the point here is we are demanding for a deregulated market. A deregulated market means a transparent market, and a transparent market means a market that changes based on all of the variables that can change prices, not a fixed price market. As long as we're talking about a fixed price market, we're still playing games.
All right. Do you think it's patriotic of Dangote Refinery to really want to sell to Nigerians? Because it would seem that it's fixated on selling to Nigerians, even though we have other countries that are saying, look, we're going to come lift from you. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't speak about patriotism when business minds are involved. But yes, there is some element of patriotism. But the most important thing is, look, Dangote is in this to make money, not to make Nigerians like him. And the point is that if foreign buyers provide him with a pricing template that is better than what Nigeria is offering him, he should sell to his foreign buyers. That's the reality of the market. That's why we call it a deregulated market. So the fact that there is an insistence on selling directly to Nigerians, again, goes back to the price conversation that I had. If anybody else is coming to buy from Dangote's refinery outside of Nigeria, they're going to insist on a transparent price. And guess what the transparent price is? There is a platform called Platts. On a daily basis, price of per ton of petrol is publicly available on Platts. It changes on a per minute basis. And anyone who's going to be buying from Dangote internationally is going to reference Platts as their price. And that's the conversation we should be having for Nigeria. But give us a price that is based off an international benchmark, which is Platts. Once we have that international benchmark, then there will be no arguments as to whether Dangote's prices are fair or whether they are not fair.
All right, Mr. Oladehin,
drive the market.
I was actually trying to indirectly
price.
I was actually trying to indirectly get your thought on this whole conversation around monopoly, if what he's trying to do is to monopolize the market, or he's just being
intuitively, that's what's happening.
patriotic. All right. Okay, I didn't want to use the word. I wanted you to use it, but it's fine. Now, a very crucial aspect, a very crucial aspect of this conversation is foreign exchange and its impact on the final cost of this product. Now, what relief are we already getting from the crude for Naira deal, or we don't have the relief yet? And what other pragmatic steps should the government take to solve this daunting forex issue?
Look, so it's early days, very early days. The whole crude for Naira started probably about a month ago. They announced it October 1st, but it started around about the 15th. So it's still very early days. You're still going to have to see that work its way through a proper pricing template, through a running process, and then you would end up at a price. But there are certain fundamentals that have happened now. First is that Nigeria is no longer looking for dollars to buy petroleum products from the international market, if what the NNPC says is true. So that's a positive. Secondly, the government now needs to start thinking about alternative ways of continuing to increase our foreign exchange inflows. And honestly, Perpetua, we've been talking about this for as long as I've been since when I was in secondary school, Nigeria diversifying its dollar base. And I think the time to stop paying lip service to it and start doing the things that are required is now. Well, yesterday was the best time, but today is the next best time to do it, which means that all the other sectors that have been neglected prior to now, that those sectors can now start to become the places where we focus our attention on. And as we save from this crude conundrum, we're able to then ensure that we galvanize the other sectors of the economy that can provide us with the foreign exchange that we need to stabilize the exchange rate and ensure that our manufacturing base actually continues to grow. And I think these are fundamentally important on a go-forward basis.
Absolutely. I mean, I would have loved to ask you this question, but I sort of feel that you've talked about it. But I'll ask it anyway. Maybe there is something else you have to say about it. And that's the fact that Nigerian businesses urgently need relief from soaring energy costs, which, of course, hinders production and increases operational expenses. Now, the continuous bickering among stakeholders, which also includes the regulator in the sector, cannot bring that needed relief. What is the way out?
So look, again, Perpetua, transparency. We need a transparent process through which everyone can see the building blocks and can agree that those building blocks indeed are transparent enough for us to know what the real solutions are. As we continue to build a market that is market-based, market-driven, transparency is going to do something very important for us on a go-forward basis, and that's give us a business or a platform, a business environment that can be predictable. You see, look, what manufacturers and the business environment needs is predictability, and the only way you can have predictability is when there's transparency in both cost build-ups and in policies. That's the solution to our problems.
Thank you so much, Femi Oladehin, Senior Partner, Argentil Capital Management Limited, for coming on the show today and for always sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you very much.